welcome back, guys, to another episode of Digital Artcast. This one's been long overdue because, trying to arrange between myself and the guest has been a logistical nightmare. Not to mention that, it's been over a month since my last episode, and that needs to really get fixed. Which is interesting because I'm interviewing about 3 or 4 people in July, so yeah, I'll just need to space those out so I've got content. But today we have a friend of mine from the other side of the world, Conrad Allen. Nice to meet you and speak to you finally on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here.
Welcome. So we had an interesting first encounter. I actually believe we had an argument over Facebook.
Well, what was that about?
Oh shit! I think it was about me being vegan. I can't remember.
I think it might have been a vegan post. Here, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, because that was, was that last year sometime? It would have been something close to that.
Or like very start of this year. I think it was like some kind of politically angled viewpoint that you had, and I was like, no, it's not quite like that.
Jesus Christ! I'm trying to. How can you view like specific posts from people, like from specific friends? I'm trying to wonder how you would do that.
You can go to your profile page and you can go to the dots and go to like see friendship and your like cover photo on the right side. But it's not showing me anything. It's just showing me one thing.
I can never mind what it actually was about, but because it was on like another artist post, and then I was like, what the fuck? Who is this guy? Who's this asshole? So
that might be why it's not showing up. I thought that was pretty good actually, because I think the initial response when you see someone like attacking you on the internet or like criticizing you is to be like, whoa, who is this flaming retard? But then at least my take from it was like I actually had some respect for who I was talking to on that, which was quite fresh.
People can disagree in this industry. It's no a thing where you've got to like sugarcoat everything you say. I mean, no, everybody agrees about everything, so you can't be afraid to speak your opinion. I mean,
I feel like the problem is that at the moment people are like coming more and more towards like this center fence sitting thing where they're like, oh, it's okay, yes, you might be right, but really like it's not always the case. And there are only a few people out there that really stand by like their extreme version of their viewpoint if they really believe that they're right. It's just something that is like as we go forwards, like the internet seems to be creating this like, I don't know, either you have the extreme view and everyone just fights, or people are like way too politically correct.
No, it goes in extremes, right? Like we were just talking about the weather, but like it's the same thing where it's either one way or another. There's no in between. I mean, I'm listening to Joe Rogan occasionally, and sure, like I didn't agree with everything the guy says, but he did have a valid point of like he was talking about fence sitting and saying that you can in essence live your life taking things from both parties. Like it used to be a thing where, especially the voting system in America, that was like a two-party race where you would either be left or right, and he was saying why not try and take advice from both sides and form your own opinion. You don't always have to be like everything Trump says is, I mean, Trump is an idiot, but like I suppose in some sense he has got some things that make kind of sense, and then obviously with Hillary, obviously people are saying the positivities, but then she has also got a sketchy background, so it was like there is some things I will agree with on her own, but then there's other things, like obviously the thing people kept talking about was the fact she wasn't for gay marriage until 2016 or something like that, but like there was good and bads to everybody, so nothing is like completely 1 or 0. There's always a grey area where you can form your own opinion of what you actually think, so
exactly.
So it was an interesting conversation, but then obviously like I cooled off and I was like, hey man, sorry for being a dick, and you're like, oh, it's all good, so that quickly sorted itself, and then I found out you were like a map painter, and I was like, oh holy shit, he's an industry guy, this is cool. And then I think since we were friends, then you kind of linked to the Map Paint Academy, which you've set up, which we'll talk about a bit later, but I got into that now, and then that's basically what I'm trying to do for work. So yeah, it's probably worked out in my favor. And they always say there's a saying. What is it? When the student is ready, the master will appear. So it's like,
That, yeah. I've forgotten about that, but yeah,
yeah, but it's like, what was that from again? Shit, I'm sure it's an actual movie where somebody gets trained.
possibly, yeah.
Oh fuck, I'm sure I was just watching it like the other day. Um, oh, that's what it was. It was Zorro. It was the first Zorro film with Anthony
Right.
Hopkins and Antonio Banderas, and like Antonio Banderas is a drunk
Yeah.
and shit, and he's trying to fight the soldier, and he's like, yeah, when the student's ready, the master will appear, and he teaches him to be Zorro. But
You
um,
know what? I think that's like a convenient coincidence sort of thing where
yeah,
like I don't think that I think that that gets fit into the story that people tell rather than the other way around, which
yeah.
should be like because the point is really that once you're good enough,
hmm
somebody will recognize that.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, totally.
yeah,
It's the way people understand that when somebody says, I'm lucky to have this job. It's not really luck, dude. Luck for me is just preparedness meets opportunity. So you were at a level you could do a job, and somebody offered you an opportunity, then you took it. That wasn't really luck.
exactly.
It was just the opportunity meets circumstance. So yeah, it's a total thing. So
Yeah.
it's the way of this, and then obviously the networking you do helps. I mean, I definitely know the work I got from Nick with Red Essence Games. That was literally just me messaging Nick, look, do you need any help
Mm,
on the game? He was like, yeah, man, we're looking for an artist. You want to come on and help us? And then that was it. So I mean,
yeah.
it's just how it happens. So yeah, so I mean, like, just a background, because I mean, like, I don't think I've even really spoke too much about where you had came from, but we did want to talk about your journey because there was an interesting point where you talked about how you finished. I'm kind of ad libbing this, but you finished university, and then you said you kind of took more time than you felt you needed to get into the industry. It was a couple of years. Um, so yeah, walk me through Conrad at university, or even just from Conrad from the start, and where your art side came from, and then what you decided you want to do, map painting, kind of where you are to now.
Uh, well, yeah. Okay, so it'd help to know like my personality. I went through school hating school,
Same.
loving computer games, and I
Yes.
remember my grade 10 was literally just Warcraft 3, just playing that like
Oh, dude.
as much as possible as I
I
could.
wrote a
And
200-word review when I was like 13 of Warcraft 3. I was so obsessed with it.
it was great, and so that was my schooling years. And when I left, I was just like, I don't want to go to uni. I don't want to learn anything. Like I just super was not ready, and I just said to my parents, I'm just taking a year off.
Mm,
And I just had the plans to like just play games, and I was just so like against the system.
yeah.
And then I did, I picked up some work.
Yeah.
I then joined the army, the reserves, and um, and I started like I was still super into my competitive gaming. Like I started a group and I started commentating. Then at some point, I'd started a little bit of structure modeling for some architects,
Oh, cool.
and I sort of reached a wall with my skills there, and I was like, well, I'm not going to earn any more than a couple like $20 an hour.
Mm,
So I went to a careers advisor who then with the help of my mum, my sister, all of us in there doing like different questionnaires.
mm,
They came up and the guy was like, okay, I think you should go over here to this uh, interactive entertainment university. There's, a games uni. And I went there and immediately fell in love, started the degree there, which was a 2 year, it was a 3 year degree compacted into 2 years.
mhm.
And that was where I really started to shine because I was learning how to make games. It's like I need
Yeah.
to make games.
Mm.
There were 300 people that started in my intake,
Oh shit.
and I think only about 60 of them actually graduated.
Wow.
Um, and they warned us up front. They said we have a 2 out of 3 dropout rate.
Yeah.
Um, and that was partly because it's not what people think, and partly because it was a compacted course and it was like a lot of work
Yeah.
in a much shorter amount of time. So, and actually, out of those 60 that graduated, I think I know of like 3 others, maybe 4 others who have actually made it in the industry.
Oh wow.
Um, and I don't know of any of them that have made it into the film industry, but I don't think like it was a games degree, so
Yeah.
they're probably not interested in the film industry.
Well, it's the
But
same across here. Like I think it's something like 95. Well, sorry, of the people who graduate art degrees, 95% of them don't go into work. 5% do. So it's a super small percentage compared to other courses like engineering, where the placement rate is super high.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I got some freelance work out. Uh, like while I was studying, I got some freelance work. I
Mhm.
deferred my degree because I had to go to, I got invited to SIGGRAPH, and then I went to Singapore for some freelance work.
Oh wow.
And this was the thing, is that during my degree, I was still trying to I was trying to get work, actual work in the industry,
Mhm.
which I think sort of separated me from everyone else,
Yeah.
because the other people are like, oh, I'm going to do this degree. Once I've done the degree, I'm going to get work.
Mm.
That's when the jobs come, is after I've got the degree, I've got the piece of paper, and everyone goes,
Yeah.
okay, so who's got the ticket? Okay, come in here.
Mhm.
It just, especially in the arts industry, it doesn't work like that.
Totally.
So I got that work, and then after that initial work, I was living with my parents, and I think part of that uh, that fact that I was living with my parents, that meant that I could really sit back and just dick around,
Yeah.
and that was my downfall. If I'm not sure if I'd be here if I didn't have the support of my parents, because I would have had to have just found a different job, and it would have
Oh,
been
dude.
really tough.
You're speaking my fucking language right now, by the way. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm in the exact same boat as you. Like, it is
Yeah.
unreal. Yeah.
So but that meant that I was able to really sit back and just not do anything. So like a lot of my days, I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this and this, and I'll start doing it, and then after about 2 hours, because you hit these little blocks where you're like, I'm just not getting there, and then you give up, and
Yeah.
you think, oh, what can I do to like reward my brain, because it's painful to feel those blockages and fail.
Oh,
So your
God,
brain's
yeah.
like, okay, let's go and do something fun, which is
Mhm.
gaming,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're a gamer.
Mm.
So that's what I would do, and then because time just disappears into that void of games.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
all of a sudden, it's 6 p.m.
Oh,
Now
mate.
that said, um, that's it. When I had a freelance job come in, because I was still like, I had my website, I
Mm,
had uh, a little bit of networking, and
mm.
look on job boards. I had like 5 or 6 that I would check every day,
Yeah.
and email. And I would email 10 jobs and get
Mhm.
one reply. And
Right.
out of every one reply, out of every 10 replies, I might get one job. So
Right.
that's like 100 to 1 hit rate.
Mm.
Uh, and so that's tough. But when I did get the jobs, then it was a total flip. Like, I wake up and I'm like, okay, awesome. I want to work. I want to, like, the first job that I got doing these like architectural parks, where I got to like create this vegetation and use the height maps that they had for their landscaping model,
Mhm.
and I created this what the park might look like.
Mhm.
And I remember waking up, like naturally waking up at like 5:30 in the morning, because my brain was so excited and so wired to actually start working and check the renders that I had from the night before.
Yeah.
And I'd gone to bed at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I just got like 4 hours sleep, and I was just geared to go.
Yeah.
Um, of course, that wears off over time, but
Mm.
I was still keen to uh, to get into it when I had jobs come in. The
Mhm.
problem was that they were so far in between that that void in between, I didn't use. I didn't use it to really upskill. And one of the biggest things was that, like, I can't draw,
Right.
I can't paint, I
Mhm.
can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
Which is why I gravitated toward Vue, which is like TerraGen. They're like 3D environment softwares,
Yep.
uh, and that was because I couldn't do the painting side, and I'd really try and push the 3D to like that 95th percentile, like like almost there,
Mhm.
and I would avoid Photoshop like the plague because,
Right.
and I internalized it like, oh, if you're photoshopping it, then you're cheating because you're not actually doing it the purest way.
Yeah.
Which is funny because right now I do most of my work in Photoshop, and
Yeah.
I feel almost the opposite, where I feel like, oh, you're doing 3D, and it's like, it's not the purest way.
Nothing is cheating. Everything is a final result.
Yes. So the point was that it took, so as a timeline, I finished, I got my first job and I left uni in 2010. I
Mhm.
got into the industry in the start of 2015. So that
Oh
was
wow. Yeah.
like 4.5 years later. And
Mhm.
inside that time, I I got a handful of jobs, a year.
Mhm.
Uh, and I almost became a travel consultant for Escape Travel, which is like a holiday flights, etc.
Right.
And I got so close, as in it was up to me and one other person out of like 100 people,
Right.
and because I've got a lot of travel experience, but they chose the other person because they had more recent sales experience. So
Right.
they're like, okay, we'd really love you to reapply, but maybe go and get some sales experience and come back in 6 months. And there was like a 6 month, like you had to wait 6 months.
All right.
Um, so in that 6 months, I went back to the drawing board, and then all of a sudden, like some opportunities and options came up. So
Mhm.
it was literally that close.
Wow.
And it was 12 months after I was at doing that interview for Escape Travel that I got into, like, that was when the path really started to get into the industry. And that was 2015. And the immediate actions that I took to trigger that series of events was I started doing a course that was not cheap uh, through Escape Studios, which is a UK online outfit. I think they've also got a studio in England,
Mhm.
and they teach all sorts of stuff. I took their intro to nuke compositing sort of thing,
Mhm.
because I figured like nuke was an industry tool,
Mhm.
and it's very difficult to really get started with nuke because you need a lot of assets to really do anything.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started doing that. I did their first of 3 terms, and I really loved it. But then I found another option, which was at Rising Sun in South Australia in Adelaide. They're a VFX studio that worked on like, I don't know, X-Men and um, other films I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Um, and they have one that's in-house. It's 10 weeks, and it's just it's like a VFX entrant course where you learn rotoscoping and 3D match moving. And
Mhm.
those are two really common junior positions to gain in the industry to get your leg in.
Mhm.
So the rotoscoping side is cutting out characters from plates and cleaning up plates and
Mhm.
things like that,
Yeah.
matching the motion blur, and um, that's usually the pathway that you get into compositing,
Mhm.
and you'll do that for like 2 years in the studio before you become a compositor.
Yeah.
And the 3D side, the 3D tracking is tracking the cameras into 3D space that have come from the set,
Right.
and that's usually the pathway into like the modeling or layout or something to do with the 3D side of the pipeline.
Right.
So I went there, and I had two goals. One was that I had to be in the top two of like the top 10% of the group that went through that intake, and I worked my butt off to make sure. There was one other guy who had a little bit of nuke skill prior to that as well, and he was almost like we were sort of neck and neck in terms of speed, and so I literally sat there next to him, and I would like glance over to where he's up to, and I'd make sure I'm like, I have to be faster than him, and and like obviously not faster with sacrificing quality, because
Yeah.
there's no point in that.
Yeah.
um But it really helped that I had that little bit of extra knowledge before that, because it meant that during that course, because we were inside the studio, the artists there and the people running it, they obviously the point for them is that they're hiring these groups of, sorry, not hiring, they're selling this course to groups of artists, and they get to see them over 10 weeks. They get to see how they work, how they take feedback, how fast they learn, whether they're good at it in general. And then if they need someone, they hire them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a paid second source of income that they also get to choose the best candidates from. So it's a brilliant model. And so my other goal during that time was to like pick the brain of the map painters who were there. And this is what you were saying, like when the students ready, the master appears. Well, that was my moment in that the guy's name is Damien Thaler, and he was the supervisor for the map painting team there.
Right.
And it's a tricky balance. You need to befriend them, but also not bother them because they're super busy.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to ride this line of you know, getting feedback, but also remaining likable to from their point of view.
Yeah.
So luckily, I rode that line. They then hired me. They didn't hire me straight away. I was on my way back to Brisbane where I was living, and I was driving back up via Sydney and Melbourne and talking to other studios. And I had another offer at another studio, but it wasn't for an environments position. And so I called Rising Sun, and I'm like, oh, I've been offered a position, and they're like, oh, congratulations. And they called me back like an hour later, and they're like, have you taken the job yet? And I was like, no. And they're like, can you come back to Adelaide? And I literally just driven like 10 hours to Melbourne from Adelaide. And they're like, oh, can you come back to Adelaide for an environment position for 9 weeks? And of course I was going to say yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that the way in that route was not, wasn't like, I've done the course now, here come the jobs.
Right.
And it is still difficult. And I guess because my base skill set is not very artistic. I work with a bunch of map painters at the moment who are all amazing painters, and I'm here like fucking stick figures with, you know, my hand fist. I feel like a caveman next to them. But like we are on equal skill levels. Well, technically I'm the senior in the group, and the rest are all mids and juniors. But in terms of the artistic, like no one's really like looking at me going, oh, you can't paint and you can't draw. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I find, as we were saying before we started recording, a lot of the really prevalent people in this industry are your like Max Bermans and Dylan Cole and Raphael Lacoste, and they're all just phenomenal 2D artists, or phenomenal artists in their own area.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if that's a true representation of the industry core.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people in there are good artists, but the people like me, I don't post any work because I don't do any of my personal work because I'm too freaking busy.
Yeah.
But the only work that I do post is every now and then when I've got the time to find a shot that I've done on a previous film, and I'll post it.
Right.
But I'm not really engaging with the community outside of map paint.
Yeah.
And so you just don't hear about these people, and it's because the people who are like the super 2D artists that can just sit down there and just like paint something amazing, they're the ones that are getting seen.
Yeah. And that's I know it's been a while since I talked, but yeah, I was trying to let you get it all out. But no, I mean, it's very accurate what you're saying, and I think that can almost be not to the detriment of the artists we're talking about, because obviously everybody you mentioned is phenomenally talented and crazy inspiring. Um, but it can be intimidating when you're leaving university. You're a student, you don't know anybody, you've never been to events, you don't really know people, and your skill level is, at that time, shit, because you're a student, you're still learning, you've just came out of university, compared to the industry standards, you have a lot of catching up to do. And when you look at people like Max or even like Dylan Cole, I mean, fuck me. I mean, I actually didn't know about Dylan Cole till Ian told me about him,
Mm,
and holy shit, like, I mean, if there's know who Dylan Cole is, go and look up his artwork online. He's a matte painter, but oh my god, like, how and why? I would love to see his process, but yeah, that can be super intimidating. Like, even for me, somebody who has been, in and out of industry events, knows people, has run the podcast, has done a bit of artwork. Yeah, it's scary because you're like, where do I begin? And I think, this was a couple of years ago at Industry Workshop 2016. I went to see a talk with Titus Lunter, and he talked about the process of sharing information and how that will help people and bring up the next generation. Because when you demystify the process, then it makes it easier and more or less complex, sorry, for people to then follow behind
yep.
you, and then you're not having to give up information all the time through private messages. If you're on a course or two, then people understand and you can show them where to go. Um, but yeah, and especially for me, like, I mean, I try as much as I can to be drawn every other day, and looking at some paint tutorials and trying to figure out how to do certain things. But um, yeah, I've just never really painted or drawn as much as I felt I should have, and yeah, it's interesting when you meet people in this industry who hand you a sketchbook and you're like, oh my god, like, how is this person functioning? They must be drawing every minute of every day, and it's interesting because I think, I have met people who, I'll probably not name names because I don't know if that's like a thing they'd want to know, but like, I have met people who are working in an industry, one of them for a massive studio at the moment, and he was like, yeah man, I'm lucky if I work 4 hours a day, like, I know I should be working more, but like, I feel I get enough done in the time I'm sitting at my desk that I don't have to be killing myself. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's always the thing he talked about, which was work smart, not hard, right? So, people can work an 8 hour day, but how much of that is actually productive? I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm a potato until about 10:30 in the morning, and I'll like everyone in my team knows it, and
Yeah.
so I don't even bother doing anything that's artistic until then,
Right.
and then I'm only good until about 4:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
So there is like a five hour window there, but outside those hours, I'll focus on different things. Like I might try and do technical stuff in the morning if
Right.
I've got something. Like quite often there's not, so you've got to be adaptable.
Right.
Uh, but and then say in that period when you're feeling really inspired, you try and just explore as many ideas as you can and not focus on all the little nitty gritty details, because
Mm.
those sorts of things like fixing up your little black values or your little alpha edges,
Mm.
those things you can do with your headphones on, watching a movie on a second screen, just like for hours. You can just tweak these things and clean stuff up. It's like it's meditative work. But
Right.
the artistic stuff, when you're starting to flow,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you just got to like jump on it. And I totally agree with the whole work smart not hard, but unfortunately if you're looking at a full-time job in the industry,
Mm.
you're going to be there from 9 till 6. Like
Yeah.
industry doesn't do 9 till 5, they do 9 till 6, and you get an unpaid lunch hour.
Yeah.
So, and then you add on like you got to add on the OT hour
Mm-hmm.
on top of that.
Yeah.
But it's not ideal, especially from my point of view. It's just like I'm not efficient the entire day.
Well,
But
that's interesting when you talk about that, because I think this is something we need to get into definitely, where you're working in. I mean, like, for people who don't know, you're working in Animal Instincts just now in Canada. But then I had my stint in Axis last year, and they're a similar studio. They do VFX work mostly for video games. And yeah, they have an approach similar, but they actually work 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. And their lunch hour is paid. So yeah, but then again, we both know that the rates in the UK are
yeah,
drastically overshadowed by the American and Canadian rates, which are crazy different. Which I don't think people, because again we had this conversation earlier about how like money and pay is a dirty word in this industry. I mean, it's kind of like a dirty word in every industry. Like I've never met anybody at all who have asked how much they earn and they've wanted to answer that question. It seems like such a personal thing you're asking them, but it's a
Yeah.
job. It's a job, right? Like it's work. It's something that isn't really attached to you. But I think with a stature thing, if you ask somebody like, "Oh, how much do you earn?" It kind of seems like a personal invasion. I don't know, but
Yeah.
everybody's
I
different.
think I think one of the issues is that I think it filters down from the top, and a lot of studios actually don't allow you to mention how much you earn, because if and it's not because of their position or your position, it's because they don't want their competitors to know.
Right.
And the same applies if you go to an interview or if you're applying for a new job and they ask you what your salary is from your previous job.
Hmm.
It's actually not legal for them to ask you that.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing that I've thankfully never been asked it or never cared to not say.
Hmm.
But if I did, I'd say sorry. Like my last employer restricts me from saying anything about that, from
Right.
letting you know, and like then it's just a non-issue. But I
Mm.
guess maybe you're not allowed to actually state it publicly how much you earn.
Mm.
I've not really thought about that until now,
Yeah.
because I'm happy talking about it,
Yeah.
but I agree. A lot of people don't, and especially when you work with somebody and they don't, which I totally disagree with. There's a company that the CEO did a TED talk on. It's actually, if you want to search it up, it's called "Buy Back Your Wednesdays for 10% of your salary." Or if you Google that, it's uh, let me search it, and you'll see it, because it was an amazing talk.
Okay. Right. I see it. Yeah.
I don't think that's it. It's this older guy, but
Yeah. I've got the TED Talk here just now.
yeah,
Cool. How to run a
um,
company with almost no rules.
that's the one.
Right.
That's
Okay.
the one. So in that he talks about how in their company all salaries are transparent. There's a whole list of like database of everyone's salary,
Hmm.
and when new people come on board, they're not asked, how much do they want, and this is what we're going to offer. There isn't a bargaining there. They figure out what are you. Where are your skills and what level are you at, and
Hmm.
here's the team that you're working with, and where do you fit in within that.
Right. Okay.
And people like generally will fit in to where they feel socially comfortable with. The guy next to them is slightly better than them, the guy
Right.
next to them on the other side is slightly worse, and so they're like sitting in between their salaries.
Right.
um, and there's other golden tidbits, like how the CEO is actually voted in by the group, and so are all the managers. Uh, Being in a management role is not reflective of your salary. You're just voted in there by your team.
Right.
Um, anyway, so yeah, that whole thing is like an whole can of worms. I reckon we should chat about that in another podcast, because we could go on for hours about that.
Yeah.
But something you said before, I thought was quite interesting. Like you said, like I'd love to see the process that Dylan Cole goes through,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that I think that mentality, it's right. Like everyone feels like want to know how Lacoste like works and how does Max Berman do his stuff,
Mm.
and I totally agree that there's a tribal knowledge that gets passed down and needs to be passed down, because there are some tricks and things that I know that like I've shared through our Map Paint Academy
Mm.
that help people like massively with like painting light or painting shadows in ways that are not just like, oh, multiply. You just set a shadow to multiply, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that sort of stuff needs to get passed down, and that's why you see the stuff that gets posted on like ArtStation and that, and it's just phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
the stuff that even 10, 20 years ago, the stuff that's coming out now is like, the hell?
Yeah.
And these guys are like young, right?
Oh yeah.
So what the hell's going on? And
Mhm.
it's because like they're learning so much quicker, especially with things like YouTube now,
Mhm.
and online learning. So you can really accelerate. But there's a problem with like a lot of people who struggle, who aren't naturally, uh, gifted with the drawing and the ideas. Like everyone starts at the same point when we're
Yeah.
born. It's just a matter of how do you develop to the point of being about 6 or 7
Mhm.
that shuts down, in some people, shuts down that creative side of their brain.
Yeah.
And and opening that back out is really difficult.
Yeah. It's just
But
get.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, for those people that have that struggle, I'm one of them. I sink into this whole idea of like if I watch somebody else do it, then he's gonna give me all the little tools and tricks and ideas that I can do to be just as good as him really quickly.
Yeah.
And you fall into this trap of like repetitious tutorial watching,
Yeah.
and it doesn't get you anywhere. As I just posted in the academy last night, that
Mhm.
I'm learning Premiere Pro at the moment to create some videos for SIGGRAPH,
Right.
and I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. And I like aside from, I know a lot of other Adobe software, and
Mhm.
I've used some video editing, Camtasia and all that.
Yeah.
But Premiere Pro is just like, what the hell? Like, why do I have to do this? And how do I rearrange this? Or like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And I watched an intro tutorial. It helped because it helped me just with a couple of initial blocks. But I think uh, the only way to really understand it is to just struggle through it, and to really struggle with doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And then when you reach something that you literally cannot do, then you look specifically for that online.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where working in the industry is incredible.
Mhm.
When I got my first job in 2015, I'd still basically used Photoshop for like exposure and color adjustments, and that's about it.
Mhm.
I'd never really done any photo bashing or anything like that. And then within like 2 months,
Mhm.
I was doing like full 360 map paintings in Photoshop. Sure, they weren't very good, and they
Yeah.
had to be like reworked by the team
Mhm.
in conjunction with me. But it was a massive amount of work as well. So I'd learned so much in that time, just sitting next to Damien and feeding off him and asking him questions every now and then.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the sort of like tribal knowledge. You just catch up so fast.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's an interesting take as well, because for me, like yourself, I feel it is, because not a lot of people know this, but with learning, depending on how you're raised, how you interact with the world, how you work through school, how you interact with other people, everybody learns differently, right? So, like for me, I feel like I'm more what they call a kinesthetic learner. So it's like a learn by
Yep.
doing situation. Like somebody, you want to learn how to hit a nail into a bit of wood. So somebody would physically hold the nail, hit it with a hammer. You would watch them, then you would repeat what they do. So I've found that for me, it is a good way of learning. But it's hard to be like that in this industry, because a lot of people who are maybe higher up, or people who are industry leaders, are people who are very self-motivated, self-learning people who can pick up a
Mm.
tutorial, watch it, right, okay, I know what I'm doing now, replicate it, and then pass it out. Where I think there's an element of people who need that person sitting next to them and then walking you through, you're doing that wrong. If you click this menu, you'll find that quicker. If you hit Control T, that's a quicker shortcut. Okay, cool. But yes, it's super rare, because everybody in this industry moves a million miles a second.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to stand still. Nobody's got time to teach. I mean, even Steve Corman. I mean, he posted the other week that I think somebody had approached him basically to teach him, like, map painting, start to finish, like, like
Yeah,
be
yeah.
their
I've
personal instructor. And I can sympathize with the guy, like, because even someone like me, who I have zero fucking skill compared to Steve, but I have been approached by people and been asked, like people who are below me, so like entry level students, people at university, or people just starting out, and they will ask me similar questions. And I remember I posted something on Facebook. It was that meme, and it was the two birds talking, and it was like, yeah, man, I'm looking to learn art. Where did I get started? And then one of the birds is like, yeah, what you really need to do is, and he starts to say like fundamentals, and the other one's the crow's like, oh yeah, man, that's cool. I don't really want to learn that shit. If you just tell me what brush you use,
Yeah.
um, and it
Just tell me how to
constantly,
paint.
yeah,
It's
like
like how to art.
how to art, and like yeah, that is what people. We had this conversation at IMAG in Paris, and a couple of the guys were talking about how you look, like you were saying, you open ArtStation and there's so much phenomenal work on the front page, but then one of the guys, Sick Brush, shout out to Christian, he was talking about how yeah, the art is cool, but the design aspect of things is going down, where people are neglecting the fundamentals of like proportion, perspective,
Yeah.
strong line artwork, strong design skills to make things just look pretty. And that's the trade off now. Like you get a lot of people who will make things in ArtStation look super pretty, but like functional, function over form, it's not there, and it's not a functional piece to be put into a game or a movie, because then like when you break stuff down for games, it's orthographics, it's 3/4 turns, it's stuff that you can use the model. Um, and yeah, I think it's the same with matte paint. Like people want to jump into like Dylan Cole, make pretty pictures look cool, and how does Photoshop's light work? How does light bounce off these things to make it look like it's lit properly? How do you clear the mats properly so that you don't get lines in between, so that your clone brush isn't making loads of smudges or replications? And that's the
Yeah.
stuff you need to learn before you jump into. And I take it, have you found this in Matte Paint Academy? Have you had a kind of small group of people where they've kind of wanted to jump in the deep end and jump straight into Nuke and make something really cool?
Yeah, it's yeah, I do see that quite often, is people wanting to take uh just go straight for the massive hero shot matte paintings.
Yeah,
And like I get that, because matte painters we get inspired by matte paintings you see in film, and they are massive hero shots. It's the hero shots that really make you go wow,
yeah,
when there's some crazy like unreal, completely out of this world environment, but it looks photorealistic.
yeah,
That's what really inspired me, and
yeah,
what inspires a lot of matte painters. So when you get started, that's your goal, and it's literally like imagine starting golf, but the only reason you started golf was because you were inspired about all the people hitting holes in one.
yeah,
That is the epitome of starting matte painting,
yeah,
because you're going to start with macaroni art, and
yeah,
you're going to slowly progress over years and years and years. And it's not like the work that I do, I don't find it very photorealistic for the most part. And I feel like when I see somebody else who's like Damien, who's been working for 22 years in the industry, and I just see something he does in like 4 hours that would take me 5 days and wouldn't even be near uh, and he uses a mouse.
Jesus Christ. Fucking
His
hell.
dexterity with the mouse is just phenomenal.
Jesus wept.
So it's you're shooting for the stars straight out with matte painting. So I get the desire to dive into the deep end and create something amazing.
Yeah.
The problem is, just like going on ArtStation and seeing all the amazing work, you get uninspired and totally demotivated by the failures that you create. And when you go on ArtStation, it's even worse, because you see somebody's amazing artwork, but the thing is, you see hundreds of them front page,
Yeah.
and you immediately feel like, well, I'm never going to do that,
Yeah.
and you just don't even try. And as somebody who came into this industry from a gaming, like entertainment fanatic point of view,
Yeah.
I think it's made even worse. Like if I was a book reader or a something else, the problem then it would be not quite as bad. The problem with gaming is that it's all designed to give you like sped up rewards, right?
It's the
Everything in
dopamine, right?
games
The
is like
dopamine
yeah,
release.
and
Yeah,
it's like you can jump in a game and it's like take like I don't know Diablo 3 or something
yeah,
where you start hacking at something and oh boom you've leveled up and you're getting all this like flashy awesome sounds and you get points to spend and you get money and it's all happening within minutes.
hmm
And so when you go to ArtStation you see all this work, you know how long some of those things that you just see there that look like amazing artworks, sometimes they are being worked on for months
Oh yeah,
and then they're posted there. And that's the thing that you just don't realize until you're at that level. And when you're starting out, you see all these hundreds being posted at a time. And it's really demotivating.
yeah.
But that's why with the Matte Paint Academy. So actually, we should probably step back and explain that to those who are listening, the Matte Paint Academy is just a Facebook group that's a private Facebook group of people who are subscribed to mattepaint.com, which is a images resource site for matte painters and artists. And so if you subscribe there, you get access to the academy, and it's a place where I, mostly me, because the other guys who are meant to be posting have been too busy.
hmm
But I share like insights and videos and tips and tricks, and we do challenges, sometimes some one-on-one sessions. At the moment, I've been really busy prepping for SIGGRAPH, so I just haven't had time to do much. But
Yeah,
that's what it is. And that's how Gordon and I started talking. So in that my focus with the academy is not to teach you how to do all that artistic stuff. We cover it, but the thing is, it's not going to get you a job.
yeah,
It's going to take you years to level up to that level that you're desiring to get to.
yeah,
And there's 100 other places on the internet that you can find out from, like Learn Squared, free YouTube stuff. You can buy books. You can, I don't know, Kit Bash. Like you can watch live streams. There's so many ways that you can learn how to be a great artist. But
yeah,
the number one thing that is like the market is saturated with that content.
yeah,
So if you want to be a great artist, watch that content and do the hard yards and paint and
yeah.
do whatever photo bash or do your modeling, whatever it happens to be. You just have to do it,
Yeah.
and you have to do it regularly with a goal. If you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna sit down and just paint, or just going to do some sketches of nothing. Like you've got to go, okay, today I'm going to do faces and I'm going to try and do 3/4 angle faces, and I'm going to do a multiple of them. I'm going to do 6, and I'm going to try and copy this style. And if you do that, and if you do a different thing of that kind of thing every day for 6 months, you will be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And there's a great video by Andrew Price. He spoke at one of the Blender conferences. And see if he talks about the 7 habits of highly effective artists. And so if you Google that, you would have seen it. It's brilliant. I actually went. Andrew and I were in the same military unit.
Wow.
10 years ago, and we both went through training around the same time, and both left around the same time. And he sort of went, we lost touch of each other, and he went to doing the Blender guru stuff, and I went into the film side. But that video is phenomenal in terms of like where you can go in 6 months. And for those who haven't watched it, he goes from stick figure drawing to amazing character work. And it's just in 6 months. And I think he only did like an hour or 2 a day. And he's not an artistic guy either. I know that's why he's gravitated towards Blender, because he's a very technical guy. Anyway, so if you want to become a great artist, you do that. But if you want to get into the industry, whatever games industry, the film industry, whatever industry you want to get a job, it's you can go that route, but if it's not your natural process, and I suspect that if people are still listening at this point, they're probably not the next Picasso. So if it's not, then you want to focus on getting good at the stuff that gets people hired.
Yeah.
And so that in our academy, that's why we focus on cleaning up, like plate cleanup, to an advanced level, right? So we're not just talking about like, oh, remove this here spot. We're talking about like rebuilding stuff that's behind a fence, and replacing skies and all, like, spot removal is just part of that.
Yeah.
And then like very small map painting patches, learning the software like Nuke and Photoshop, and any other software like Shotgun, which is a production software used in the industry. If you can understand all that, and because that's what you're going to be doing for like 6 months as a junior. When I started my first 2 weeks, I was literally just grabbing clouds from the internet, putting them in Photoshop, keying them out, and saving them as little, TIFF with alphas. So we had a little library of clouds that we just drag and drop.
Yeah.
And that was because it only took me 2 weeks because I got through quite quick. And then my supervisor was like, okay, well, you're doing pretty good with that. Let's get you something a bit more substantial. So he gave me something else I can't remember. But you're not going to be doing the hero shots. That's the point. You're going to be working on tiny little CG patches, plate cleanup, or even just supporting other artists by finding reference. And it's fine not to be an amazing artist. However, it's good to have the balance, because if you're competing with somebody else who's really good technically and really good with the basics, but he also has amazing map paintings, well, they're going to get the job. Because they've demonstrated their ability to move up. There's other things like your resume that we focus on in the academy, and your interviewing skills. So far, I've done 2 mock interviews, and I'm doing a 3rd one with Stefan now.
Cool.
That'll be next weekend. So so Ian was the first mock interview that I did, and I helped him with improving his presentation. I told him, like, these are the sorts of questions that interviewers will ask, and these are the sorts of things that, from my experience, should be similar to what you should be answering.
Right.
And because the thing is, if you get to the interview stage, the chances are you're in the top bucket of people, and they're looking for somebody that they can work with and that they like. So this is a core problem with people who are trying to get into the industry, is that so many of them come off as desperate girlfriend sort of meme thing, where like, what is it, overly attached girlfriend, where and I'll work 10 hours and I'll do anything to get in. Like, it's just such a turn off. And I actually have an email from me to the same recruiter that recruited me for the current studio I'm at now, but it was 6 years ago. He was at a different studio.
Right.
Man, it's so cringeworthy. Because I think I just left. It was actually for Elysium, so I think it was 2010, 2012 or something. I'd just been out of university, and it was actually for a senior map painter. And man, I looking back at it now, I'm like, senior map painter, what a joke. Because I hadn't done any map painting. I'd done environment work, but my email was like 4 pages long about the reasons why you should hire me, kind of thing. And nowadays it's like 3 lines. It's like, yes, I'm interested. This is what I would come on for, and how long would the project be, kind of thing.
Pretty much.
But the point is, if you're trying to get into the industry, you need to be likable, and that is not always the case with everyone,
Mm.
and some people are likable people, but only when you get to know them, and that's not good enough because it's a risk that the studio is just not going to take if they don't have to take that risk.
Yeah.
So the mock interviews I find is a really great way of practicing, because this comes back to just doing it, right?
Yeah.
You just like you have to just paint to get better. There's like a tangibility to it that if you don't do it, you're just not good at it. And in a mock interview, it's a super uh, safe place to discuss and explore different ways uh, to engage with somebody in a fake interview sense.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go back immediately afterwards, and we talk about, okay, what did you say? How could you improve?
Hmm.
And yeah, and so on. And
Yeah.
I find that most people, as they get through the mock interviews, they get more relaxed and become themselves,
Yeah.
and that is absolutely key.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting as well. We had this conversation, and again, completely out of context, but this is not an attack on concept artists, obviously, because concept artists are a trained and skilled set of guys that do amazing work. But we kind of talked about when I was approaching the idea of working as a matte painter that like everybody wants to be a concept artist now. It's almost a thing that people automatically, as soon as they become artists, are like, I want to do concept art. And then on top of that, I would say that, and this obviously comes from one of the guys, Spurden, and he kind of convinced me about this as we were talking about IMAG. But he was saying that the concept artists, a concept artist isn't a thing. What people are concept designers, or what they should be is concept designers.
Mm.
But then like because the matte painting stuff can be more technical and slightly more tedious because of the tasks you're accomplishing, less people want to go into that field directly. It's more a thing where people will have an avenue of doing a specific skill set and work into that job, but most people who are artists will want to go into do um, concept design. And then obviously like 3D as well is very underappreciated. There is obviously a lot of great 3D artists out there, but again, it's one thing that people don't see it as. If you're artistic, 3D is almost like as a counterpart of concept design. Now people use it for mock-ups, but really good 3D artists are rare because it's an industry not a ton of people want to go into either. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a thing with Matt. Like you said, if you're going to do it, then there is probably more opportunity in that field because it's such a niche skill set.
Yeah, concept artists are they're the glory positions. They're the people that, if you're a concept artist, especially in a visual effects studio, because there are even fewer of those jobs.
Yeah.
Look, in terms of the number of concept artists you see on ArtStation, there's
Mm.
probably 1 to 5% of those are actual concept artists
Yeah.
in a full-time position, because there's just not all that many jobs. Because you, as a concept artist, the point is to bash out really. You have to get the vision of what the director or whoever the producer is telling you they want. You
Mm.
have to achieve that vision with the least amount of brushstrokes.
Yeah.
So, and that's what makes a good concept artist.
Yeah.
So you can have one concept artist and a studio of 100 people
Hmm.
and have no problems.
Yeah.
But because it is that like a glorified position, as you said, a lot of people want to get into it.
Mm.
Um, but that means that you're also going to be paid a lot less
Yeah.
than other roles, because it's like probably anywhere from 25 to 35% less than a matte painting role.
Yeah.
And it's because there's just so many of them, and they can find a good one wherever they look, really.
Yeah.
And matte painters are the opposite, where they are quite hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, like
Um,
really good ones. I mean, like even the guys I have met who have worked in studios, a lot of the guys I've seen who are getting work are people who really have to be sitting in the top 15%. And whereas with Matt and 3D, I mean, I'm generalising here, I don't know as much, but I have noticed that, yeah, there is only maybe a handful of guys I know who are concept artists who get regular work or do things external from projects. And then when I was at IMAG, we had an interview, well, we were watching a talk from Raphael Lacoste, and I asked him how many 2D artists work within the Assassin's Creed team, and he was saying, the whole world, probably like 100 people. 100 people over like 5 studios across the entire world is
Yeah.
not a lot of jobs. That is, you know, and I think 10 of them are in like Canada. So, yeah, it's like, it's such a niche, hard to find, small minority job that you will get full
Yeah.
time. And yeah, whereas you work in movies, you need a large team because your turnover's so quick for pumping out shots. You need technical guys like map painters, like modelers, nuke guys,
Yeah.
by the dozen almost.
Yeah. The game's turnaround, the production pipeline is a lot longer. It
Mm.
is shortening slowly. It
Yeah,
used to be like 5 years, and it's now maybe 2 to 3 years.
yeah,
But it's it's going to be much harder to get into that than film, I would
yeah,
say, especially with all the TV shows that are out now.
yeah,
Things like Arrow and was it Jessica Jones, and all of
yeah,
those where they have visual effects quite heavy in some of them,
yeah,
and those are actually soaking up a lot of artists, because studios that take on those TV series, they can do one season of that and it pays for the whole team for a year.
wow,
So, or maybe like that might not always be the case, but they might have to take on two different TV shows, but
yeah,
that pays for the team, right?
yeah,
So those artists are really happy to just sit there and just do those jobs, and they're quite efficient, because once you've got the first season done, you know what the effects and what the environments are going to look like, and you can reuse a lot of assets.
yeah,
Um, so there's a lot more jobs in that area.
yeah. Yeah, and which is good, I suppose, for an influx of people who want to work in film. That there is an opportunity to, it's like it's not an impossible dream. Where I feel like concept is like you said, it's moving towards the idea of you have to be so talented before you even get an interview. Like for people who would get an interview at Access or an interview at um say Ubisoft, for example. I mean, like even when I spoke to, again going back to Raphael, when we had dinner at the talk and he was taking questions, one of the questions I asked him, which was this, which led to talking about how many people he had, he was saying, I said to him, what do you look for in junior artists? What do you look for in people that would want to come in and join the franchise? And he was like, we don't really look for juniors anymore. We specifically look for seniors because we try to keep the bar high on the franchise. And you can
Yeah,
understand that because it's such a big moneymaker for Ubisoft. They only want the best. It's the same way Access, when they have a short turnaround for a project, they actively seek out mostly senior positions because they need to have people come in, like Steve. He was recently at Access, and he will come in and pump out a couple of mats or scenes really quickly for the project he's working on, and move on to the next studio. But that's because the turnovers are short for, like, trailers mostly are done in 6 months, just 6 to 8 months, and then you can't afford to have a junior on a project like that because unless they're exceptionally talented, it's
yeah,
almost like
yeah.
costing you money to teach them to take time out to correct their work. So um, yeah,
Yeah, it's and some studios and visual effects work that way as well. But and then there's sort of two approaches where you hire just a small group of seniors, or you go like the NPC route where they hire just a couple of seniors and basically all juniors,
mm,
and that way it's because you save a lot of money hiring the juniors, and then you just keep the seniors are there to like um, to uh, to babysit
yeah, the juniors,
the juniors.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's certainly not. It's not easy to get into any of the the industries in art, and I think realistically, a lot of people are just never going to make it.
Yeah.
Because not because of a lack of skill or lack of desire or lack of discipline.
Mhm.
There just simply is not enough jobs for the number of people that want to work in it.
Yeah.
And that's the case with all desire. Like you know, there's not enough jobs for people who want to become astronauts, but you know,
Yeah.
that's the case. I feel like people are more butthurt about art, not getting an art job
Mm.
than those who are like, oh, you know, I didn't become a jet fighter pilot because somebody else did. Like
Yeah.
maybe because of the physicality of it, whereas art's like, oh, you know, if I just become an amazing artist at home, I'll get a job.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I think uh, a lot of artists who are really good, who are not like if they don't get a job, it's usually because they're just not good at the business side.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit, in my approach, I've been way better at my business side than I have been at my artistic side.
Yeah.
And just in terms of the art side, I just make sure that I'm quicker than everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't do the best work because like my capacity is not the same level as them.
Yeah.
It's improving.
Yeah.
And I'm a senior, so obviously for a lot of the mids and juniors, I do better work. But if we compare them in a few years, in like 5 years down the track when they are seniors, they're friggin' miles better than me.
Yeah.
But I will always be faster in the technical side, because that's where I'm like, if you wanna hold on to what you have in the industry, you've got to have something that you're like, this is my thing, right?
Yeah.
If you need, like I did on Power Rangers, I
Mhm.
did 272 shots
Wow.
in one nuke script,
Wow.
and that was because I knew how to set that up, and that was with we had one major match, like map painting for it, and I piped it all through this one nuke script, and I knew how to farm it out and just do it all at once.
Wow.
And I did the same thing in my first studio. That was when I kind of learned that I was good at nuke. And so now, whenever they have a massive sequence that needs to be done, they're like, Conrad, like this week I took over 8 shots from another artist so we're doing Comic-Con delivery. That's Comic-Con's this coming weekend for Lego 2.
Right.
So we had a bunch of stuff that we have to finish, and I took over 8 of her shots and did them in 4 hours, and she'd been working on one of them for 2 days.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that, like, her work looked better than mine, but it was more of a technical thing where it's like 360-degree patch that could be done for all of them at once, and she was doing like one at a time, and she only got through one. So whenever there's a sequence, they give it to me, but whenever there's something more artistic, it'll go to someone else, and that's completely fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just the way of the industry. And then I feel like because I don't know how we're doing for time, but obviously we're an hour in. But I was wanting to just kind of permutate that it's not all doom and gloom. Don't get disheartened. Like, you know, I was literally just going to talk about Ian, who has, you know, for the past 3 or 4 months, grinded, learning map painting and learning stuff from you guys at the academy, and he just landed a job at Frame Store doing work for them as a junior. And he has said that, you know, he's been doing shots that people have been saying have been quicker than people that were kind before him. So, like, there is hope. Like, you know, and like Ian was saying, he's not doing anything magical. There's no secret formula. He was literally just sitting at his desk for 14 hours a day, grinding.
He is one of those people that's a machine for. But he's not. And I encourage everyone to actually just search his name, Ian Vicknair, on ArtStation.
Yeah, I'll put a link below in the description so you can get his portfolio on ArtStation.
And his like his early stuff in September, October last year, when I first bumped into him, was like, he's really good at design work, things like like business cards and flyers and things like that. But
Yeah.
his map painting work was like higgledy-piggledy, like jigsaw cut out. It didn't feel good or look that great.
Yeah.
But man, in 6 months, because he was just pumping out stuff all the time, and he was like annoyingly requesting like all these like feedback and things. But he kind of like rode that line where he was like just slightly past like too much,
Yeah.
but not enough for me to be like, "Oi, go away! I don't want to talk to you." And obviously from my position, like I like helping people. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started the academy.
Yeah.
But his improvement over 6 months it shows just how fast you can get there.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most people just like me, you know, I probably could have got into a film position in inside a year as well, had I just sat down and done it. But it's I don't know what to say about that, like because I can't say just do it, because I know that everyone, like, you'll wake up one morning, you'll be like, yeah, I'm good to go. Like, you've listened to the latest Anthony Robbins podcast, and you're like, yeah, all right. Or you've just come back from like Landmark or some and you're geared to go, but then it wears off, and you just go back to your normal state of being.
Yeah.
I think in that respect, what I've learned is you do little things that you got to change something just little by little, and until you'll always feel like it's a slight struggle. But then if you keep adding on, like say you start with half an hour of painting in a day, and then the next day you're like, okay, I'll do half an hour again, and then I'll do 45 minutes on the third day for 2 days, and then an hour. And then all of a sudden that first half hour becomes like just easy. You're like, yeah, cool, it's just half an hour.
Yeah.
The next half hour is a struggle, but then, you know, after another 2 weeks, you're doing 3 hours, and the first 2 hours are easy because you've become acclimatized to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's a little and often fact where people like, I mean, I just watched the talk that happened last October with Vitaly Burgerov, who does amazing 3D stuff. Like, he's building mechs in Korea. It's crazy. But he done a whole 10-minute segment. I'll try maybe even link the talk down below, where he was at No Man's School of Art, and they were asking him, you know, what about people you meet who are like, oh yeah, if you just motivated this guy, he would be such a good worker, but yeah, he lacks motivation. And Vitaly was like, motivation isn't what keeps you going, it's what sometimes gets you through harder times. But this industry, like everything, is a job, and you will have good days and bad days. There will be days obviously you don't want to get up and do stuff, there'll be days when you do, and the thing is, on those days you still have to get up and try and do something, because you're tricking your brain into thinking that you're working and that you're still being productive. Because if you go a day without working, then it turns into 2 days, which turns into 4, turns into a week, turns into a month. And you have to keep a consistency in your life, because then that's what breeds the work habit. It's like when people go back to school after years, like if they go back to university or college later in life, they find it a lot harder than the younger kids. Sure, that's not because kids learn things faster or people who are older can't learn things. It's because kids that came straight out of school, high school usually, where, you know, they're learning things every single day because they're in school, they're forced to go there 9 to 5. So for an adult who hasn't really, you know, kicked in his brain to learning mode in years, it is so much harder, because you're not used to studying, you're not used to putting your brain into that mode. And that's what he was saying, you need to be doing things every single day, and that will eventually breed a learning habit that will help you learn. So yeah,
I think one approach you could take is doing the sort of like 9 till 3 or 10 till 4 or something like that. Don't make it like a 9-hour day. But if you just treat that as like if you have two different machines, that's even better. Or if you have a place to go that has no distractions on it in terms of other things. So if you have that, where you've got a place and there's no like computer games, there's no movies, or maybe there is because you can watch a movie and work. But there's no like distractions for you. Then you just go there from 10 till 4 every day for 5 days a week. And you treat it like your job. And you don't sign into Facebook, and you don't have anything to stimulate you that's a distraction,
Yep.
except for maybe your phone, because your phone is a tangible distraction where like you know that you're on something else, whereas you can scroll through Facebook for like an hour and not really like realize it. Or same with like YouTube and that. So if you did that for like a month, and you just tried to find one thing every day that you were like improving on, and then look back at that month, and see if you're happy with the progress you made.
Yep.
I think the thing is that that's gonna have like a reinforcing effect on your motivation. You'll see how far you went in a month, and you'll be like, "Whoa, that was shit,"
Yeah.
and this is awesome. And then after another month, you'll be like, "Well, no, that was shit. And this is awesome." And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, you're up in the trending areas of ArtStation. Got a job.
Woo, I done that once.
Yeah. I haven't done it.
No, but that's the thing is like as well as that I feel that needs to be said as well when you talk about making these decisions and studying day to day. Be very specific about what you learn, because I have fell into the trap very early on when I got into the industry. Well, I mean, like, I only really decided I wanted to do this properly 3 years ago. And for 3 years, I was learning so many different things. Like, I was learning 3D, I was learning 2D, I was learning concept art, I was learning substance painter. I was
Yeah.
you just, because there's so much, right? You tend to just learn something new every day. But then, like when I was talking to one of my, well, a guy who's now kind of mentoring me, like he was saying, the best way to approach every task is to be super specific about what you learn. So like if you're going to learn matte painting and Photoshop, say it's even just like starting with just Photoshop, like learn the in and outs of that program to death and just get good at that one thing before
Yeah.
you move on to something else. Because if you learn Photoshop on the Monday, then you jump into Nuke on Tuesday, you're like coming back to Photoshop maybe Wednesday, Thursday, you're like, oh, fuck, what did I learn again? Like, it totally
Yeah.
goes at your memory. So yeah, like try and be specific in what you're wanting to accomplish. Like Conrad was saying, like doing faces, like 3/4 turns. Like if you're going to learn drawing faces, then do faces for like a week. Like make sure you're nailing that into your head as much as you can, because repetition breeds familiarity. And it's the same with Photoshop. You know, if you want to learn how to do matte, yeah, just focus on the Photoshop toolset for as long as you can before you move on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just directed learning.
Yeah.
And I think that Andrew Price video is the 7 habits is it really encapsulates how effective that can be
Yep.
when you take that approach, and in a real world that you don't get very often.
Yep.
So I definitely encourage anyone who's like struggling to really get going to do that. And then just you know how people just as the last thing, because we should probably wrap this up, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know how some people are like, oh, print up something on the wall and like have your motivational. Just have one thing that you print and you put up, and it can change as you go. But the key to it is that you don't just put a sticky note on your monitor that's sitting there. You actually have to look at it and acknowledge it every day.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it becomes part of the furniture, and you ignore it. You forget that it's even there.
Yep.
So if you have something like 7 habits or whatever you write down, like just you might write like today I'm going to today do some directed learning or something like that.
Yeah.
And you just read that and you think, okay, what am I actually going to do about this, like these words?
Yeah.
That can really help to keep you on track, because otherwise you just slip straight back into the old ways.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the best ones I ever saw was just a poster that says, like, when you look up at it, it's like, get the fuck back to work. You're like, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. I understand what you're saying there. So yeah, that's one of the best things. But it is, a lot of this sounds simple, but me and Conrad both understand that, yeah, it can be super hard to find proper motivation, proper things where you're like, yeah, I want to get up and do things today. So yeah, just take it a day at a time, and don't, like, seriously, don't beat yourself up. If you're looking at other artists and you're thinking that you're not as good or not as far as they can be because they've put in the time already, you're never going to be catching up with somebody fast enough. And Vitaly also said a good thing where people, if you if you emulate somebody that closely, by the time you get to their skill set, you'll probably find that maybe the industry doesn't actually need that skill set, and you've worked towards that guy's, skill set for no real reward. You've become a carbon copy, sure, but that, his style or his approach or his software usage isn't needed anymore. You need to become
Yeah.
a better version of yourself, not of another person. So
Yeah.
yeah, like Dylan Cole's a good guy I admire, but don't like try to set out to be Dylan, because
Yeah,
Dylan's Dylan.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if like, I encourage everyone to join the Matte Paint user group on Facebook, which is the public group, and feel free to like email me through any of the avenues you can find. Just go to mattepaint.com and just go to the contact area, and you'll reach me.
Yeah.
Because I'm always happy to give advice to people who, at various stages, and guide them in what I think might be a good avenue for them to go down.
Definitely. I mean, speaking from personal experience, I know Conrad and the guys have definitely helped me so far. And yeah, like I'll put all the links below. I'll put the Matte Paint Academy. I'll put the Facebook group. I'll put all the links that need, and I'll obviously include Conrad's email so you guys can get in touch. But yeah, we're going to do, I think the plan is to do a second episode where I think we're going to focus more on the academy, and we'll probably find some other talking points. Like we know we want to talk about salary, a kind of typical day as a junior, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a broad spectrum of stuff to cover. Conrad will be back on again.
And if anyone has any questions or suggestions, we can answer them and cover the suggestions. Yeah. Like that would be a really good way. Like, we can actually answer stuff that you guys want to know the answers to.
Yeah, and Ian, for God's sake, don't post a comment asking a question. we know you've got them. Just fucking message us on Facebook. No, seriously, man. Like we did some, but Ian's a cool good dude. He's a super hard worker, and he totally deserves his opportunities. He's really worked fucking hard for it. So yeah. He's an example, actually. That's why I've actually got him mentoring me at the moment, because yeah, Ian's an inspirational guy. He's been helping me a lot. So yeah. Cool. So done. Just need to thank Conrad for coming on and giving up your time. I know you're a busy guy.
No problems.
And yeah, like I said, leave some comments if you guys want to ask him a question, or it doesn't have to maybe even be Matt specific. Maybe just about the film industry in general. I'm sure you'll be able to find out an answer if you can't. You'll ask somebody who knows, and yeah, sure, we'll get him back on. We'll do a kind of part 2. We might even do a little series on the Matte Paint Academy, and maybe when you've got some releases coming up or something you want to promote, we can get involved here and push it out to the audience. Nearly 1,000 subscribers, so close. I think we're at 965 or something like that.
Nice.
So, oh god, man, like it's taken me like a year and a half, but like yeah, I'm hoping we hit 1,000 soon, because I've been told from then it starts to like kind of like roll down the hill, like it
naturally expand.
Yeah, so yeah.
So that's really interesting. It's taken you a year and a half to get from nothing to 1,000 subscribers. And that is encapsulating exactly the sort of approach you need to take for the artist side. It's going to happen overnight, and the best podcast presenters and the YouTube celebrities and all that. They do. It takes them like 3 years to get to like 50,000 subscribers, and then all of a sudden it's like they're like at 300, and like, obviously you've still got to have good content, but so 1,000 subscribers is awesome.
Yeah, man. And like it's the same when people talk about like getting opportunities to work with Essence Games and stuff like that. Like it literally is just me being a stubborn dick and like not giving up. You stay on the path long enough, something will happen. Like, I mean, it might take you 2 years, it might take you 3, but yeah, I know people who just got their first Magic the Gathering gig, like painting for them, but they've been like, I've known them for like 6-7 years, and yeah, they were like painting daily for years before like Magic even looked their way. So I mean, it does take a while. So I think that's the whole thing of this encapsulates. It's not just matte painting, but the whole industry is that these skill sets take years to develop, and it can be. I think that's what throws me a lot of times as well, because I'm in my 30s, where like a lot of kids like you see are younger and they're doing it quicker. So I feel like I've got to catch up. But yeah, it does take a while. And if you looked at some of my paintings, for like, or even just paintings from a couple of years ago, yeah, I definitely see night and day. Even my Star Wars piece of them recently, like, yeah,
I've seen a massive movement, and I'm after you've done like of these, I want to actually sit down with you and go through each of them. I'll get you to send them to me, and I'll show you some tricks of how you each one of them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about like the things that are letting them down.
Cool.
Because what you might have is like certain things that are like lagging behind the rest, that are holding up the process back. So we'll go over that.
Nice man, cool. We could maybe even do a live critique at one point as well. That might even be a thing, Conrad. We can maybe get some stuff for people maybe even critique. You could look through stuff, maybe a thing. We can talk about that. Cool. Yeah. Okay, right, I'll let Conrad go because he's busy as feck. But yeah, thanks guys for tuning in. Stay to the YouTube side of it. If you're watching, give us a like and a comment. Subscribe obviously, and then iTunes, we always look for good positive reviews on the 5-star ratio, and subscribe to that as well. And yeah, we'll catch you guys later. Thanks very much, Conrad.